What if I told you that in just 1 week, America's most powerful ally was publicly threatened with devastating tariffs, and instead of bending, they just rewrote the rules of the game? Donald Trump aimed his economic fire at Canada, expecting panic, expecting compliance. But what happened next was something Washington didn't see coming, and it will shake the foundations of North American defense and trade for years to come. Germany handed Canada a billion-dollar contract. Sweden is talking about building advanced fighter jets in Canadian factories, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Every threat, every warning from the White House seems to have done one thing: push Canada deeper into Europe's strategic embrace. And the consequences? They're massive. Let's break down what actually happened. Donald Trump threatened Canada with 25% tariffs on key goods, a move designed to force Ottawa to comply, to bend to Washington's will. Wall Street assumed Canada would cave. Political analysts predicted immediate capitulation. But Canada didn't panic. Instead, something extraordinary unfolded while the world was watching the threats. Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse, made a decision that stunned Washington. They chose Canadian defense technology, the CMS 330 combat management system, over American systems, over French and British alternatives. That's over $1 billion flowing to Canada, a public validation of Canada's defense capabilities. Meanwhile, Sweden's royal visit wasn't just ceremonial pomp. King Carl XVI, Gustaf, and Queen Sylvia arrived with ministers, top defense officials, and executives from Sweden's most advanced military companies. Their message was clear: Canada isn't just a neighbor, it's a strategic partner. Think about this. Trump's tariffs were meant to intimidate. Instead, they created an opportunity for Canada to strengthen alliances with Europe. Every American threat became a European investment. Every attempt to pressure Canada only highlighted its value to the world's most advanced economies. And this is only the beginning. Because the next moves aren't just about defense contracts, they're about reshaping alliances, trade, and the balance of power in the Western world. Now, let's look at how Europe responded and why it matters more than anyone in Washington expected. Sweden's royal visit to Ottawa wasn't a 3-day ceremonial tour. King Carl XVI, Gustaf, Queen Sylvia, Sweden's industry minister, and defense officials arrived with one goal: to forge a strategic partnership with Canada. They brought dozens of Sweden's top defense companies, checkbooks in hand, ready to invest, to build, to integrate. Their message was unmistakable: Canada isn't just a market, it's a partner in building Europe's future defense and industrial capability. And then there's Germany. The German Navy, one of Europe's most advanced maritime forces, made a move that sent shockwaves across Washington. They chose Canada's CMS 330 combat management system over American alternatives, over European systems from France and Britain. That's over $1 billion Canadian, a vote of confidence in Canada's defense technology. But it's more than just a product purchase. Germany is effectively buying into Canada's entire defense ecosystem, a modular system that integrates with multiple sensors, weapons platforms, and NATO networks. This isn't procurement. This is a strategic alignment. Contrast this with Washington's expectations. Trump's tariffs were supposed to intimidate. They were supposed to force compliance. Instead, they accelerated Canada's ties with Europe. Sweden and Germany acted decisively, strategically, and publicly, signaling to the world that Canada is a reliable, stable, and increasingly indispensable partner. Every threat from Washington became a reason for Europe to invest more, to deepen integration, and to build supply chains in Canada. And here's the kicker. This isn't just about naval systems. Fighter jets are next. Advanced manufacturing partnerships, high-tech jobs, long-term industrial cooperation, all now squarely on the table. Europe didn't just counter a threat. They transformed it into an opportunity, and Canada is at the center of a game-changing strategic pivot. To understand why these European moves matter so much, we need to zoom in on Canada's defense strategy. Canada wasn't just standing by during Trump's tariff threats. The government made a bold decision, a full review of the F-35 contract. 16 jets were already committed, but the remaining 72 were suddenly under reconsideration. Why? Because America's threats exposed a vulnerability, relying too heavily on a single, unpredictable partner. This is where Sweden enters the picture in a game-changing way. Saab, the Swedish defense company behind the advanced Gripen fighter jet, is already in talks with Canada. But they're not just talking about selling jets, they're talking about building them in Canada, in partnership with Bombardier, Canada's aerospace giant. 10,000 high-paying, advanced manufacturing jobs could be created on Canadian soil. Let that sink in. Jobs, technology, and industrial capacity, all emerging directly because Trump attempted to pressure Ottawa. The implications go beyond employment. Building Gripen jets in Canada would diversify North America's defense supply chain. Canada would no longer be a simple consumer of American technology, it would become a hub for European defense manufacturing. Modular systems, shared research, and integrated production would strengthen Canada's autonomy, its technological capabilities, and its strategic position within NATO. And here's the paradox: every action meant to intimidate Canada has accelerated this shift. Tariffs were supposed to create leverage. Instead, they forced Canada to explore alternatives that bring Europe's most advanced defense technology directly onto Canadian soil. What we are witnessing isn't just a defense review, it's the beginning of a fundamental realignment in how Canada approaches alliances, industry, and long-term security. The question now is obvious. How far will this realignment go? How many American contracts could shift? How many supply chains could change? And how many jobs could be created, all because Europe moved decisively while the US hesitated? And that's just the start of the story. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture, the economic and political consequences of these moves. Germany's billion-dollar CMS 330 contract and Sweden's fighter jet plans aren't just defense deals. They're a clear signal. Canada's defense sector is not just viable, it's essential. European validation like this sends a powerful message to Washington. Threats, tariffs, and coercion won't bend Canada. Instead, they will diversify their partnerships and secure alternatives. Canada's strategic partnerships now extend far beyond defense. The agreement with Sweden covers clean energy, critical minerals, advanced manufacturing, research, and life sciences. Europe isn't just buying equipment, it's integrating economies, sharing technology, and creating jobs across multiple sectors. Every American tariff threat has become a catalyst for Europe to embed itself deeper into Canada's industrial and technological ecosystem. Politically, this is seismic. The U.S. assumed leverage, expecting Ottawa to comply. Instead, Canada has positioned itself as a reliable, predictable partner, one that Europe is eager to invest in. This reshapes North American negotiations. The balance of power isn't just about who builds jets or naval systems anymore. It's about who sets the rules for industrial cooperation, strategic partnerships, and regional influence. And the timing is critical. Every announcement, every contract, every discussion is happening while Trump's tariffs still hang over Ottawa. The political irony is sharp. The very threats meant to intimidate are now driving Canada deeper into European networks. European nations are watching this unfold and asking themselves a simple, urgent question. If the United States can threaten Canada like this, what guarantees do we have? This is where economic power meets political strategy. Canada isn't just accepting European support, it's actively pursuing it. And every move strengthens its position, creates jobs, and builds resilience against political uncertainty. The stage is set for a transformation that could redefine alliances in North America, and the consequences will reach far beyond Ottawa. The story doesn't end at Canada's borders. What Europe is doing now sends shockwaves through NATO and the global security landscape. Sweden's involvement isn't just economic or industrial, it's strategic. Remember, Sweden only recently joined NATO, breaking centuries of neutrality largely in response to Russian aggression in Ukraine. And Canada was the first country to ratify Sweden's NATO membership. That historical support is now being repaid through billion-dollar contracts, industrial partnerships, and strategic integration. This is where the global implications become clear. Europe is watching Washington's unpredictability and asking a fundamental question. If the United States threatens its closest neighbor, what guarantee do we have that our own alliances will be respected? The answer, increasingly, is that Europe will hedge, diversifying partnerships with stable, reliable countries like Canada. The Arctic and Euro-Atlantic regions are central to this strategy. Sweden and Canada are both Arctic nations, sharing responsibilities in security, environmental monitoring, and defense infrastructure. Their partnership is creating a framework for collective security independent of U.S. pressure. This isn't speculation. It's being built into contracts, production agreements, and strategic dialogues. And here's the most striking point. Every threat Trump makes, every tariff warning accelerates this trend. European countries are no longer passive observers. They are active participants in a reorientation of Western alliances. Canada is emerging as a hub for European defense technology, high-paying jobs, and strategic influence, all while America struggles to maintain leverage. The lesson is clear. Economic coercion can backfire. Washington assumed tariffs would intimidate Canada. Instead, they catalyzed a shift toward Europe, strengthened NATO integration, and sent a global message that reliability and predictability are now valued above coercion. What Europe is doing isn't just a defense contract or industrial partnership, it's the beginning of a new pattern in global diplomacy. To understand just how significant these moves are, it helps to look at history. There is a pattern when the United States has attempted economic coercion against allies. The results often backfire. Time and again, threats intended to bend smaller nations end up pushing them toward alternative partnerships, creating new centers of influence outside of American control. Take, for example, the Cold War era. The U.S. frequently leveraged economic aid or threats to influence allies in Europe and Asia. In several cases, nations responded not by submitting but by diversifying their relationships, seeking trade, technology, and security arrangements that reduced reliance on Washington. The lesson is clear. Coercion may yield short-term compliance, but long-term strategic loyalty is earned through stability, reliability, and mutual respect. Canada's current situation echoes that history. Trump's tariff threats were meant to create leverage, but they have accelerated diversification. Germany's billion-dollar naval contract and Sweden's fighter jet plans are part of a pattern that history has shown. When one power becomes unpredictable, smaller but capable allies step in to fill the vacuum. Canada is not just hedging, it's asserting strategic independence in a way that mirrors successful historical maneuvers by other middle powers. Even more striking, the stakes today are higher. Unlike past decades, the integration is not only about alliances, but also about industrial capacity, technology transfer, and job creation. This isn't just a diplomatic pivot, it's a structural realignment of supply chains, defense manufacturing, and geopolitical influence. Canada isn't reacting passively, it's learning from history and acting decisively, using European partnerships to strengthen its own economy, technology, and strategic position. The historical lesson is clear. When the U.S. uses coercion, the world notices, and capable allies exploit the opportunity. What we are seeing now is history repeating itself, but with higher stakes, faster consequences, and a reshaping of the balance of power that could last decades. Looking ahead, the developments this week could reshape the Western alliance for decades. Canada's strategic pivot toward Europe isn't a temporary reaction, it's the start of a long-term realignment. If even a portion of the F-35 contract shifts to Swedish Gripen jets built in Canada, we are looking at thousands of advanced manufacturing jobs, billions in domestic investment, and a fundamentally more diversified defense supply chain. The ripple effects will touch every corner of North America and Europe. Europe's integration with Canada sends a clear signal to the rest of the world. Stability, reliability, and shared values are now more valuable than coercion. Countries are watching, and alliances will be reconsidered. Middle powers and smaller allies are taking note. If the United States cannot be counted on to maintain consistent policy or honor agreements, alternative partnerships will gain traction, and Canada is leading the way. This also raises questions about the future of U.S. influence. Economic threats no longer automatically translate into political leverage. Every tariff, every public warning strengthens Canada's hand and encourages European investment. Washington may believe it is shaping outcomes, but the reality is that these actions are driving the opposite effect: deeper European integration and a more autonomous Canada. This also raises questions about the future of U.S. influence. Economic threats no longer automatically translate into political leverage. Every tariff, every public warning strengthens Canada's hand and encourages European investment. Washington may believe it is shaping outcomes, but the reality is that these actions are driving the opposite effect: deeper European integration and a more autonomous Canada.